When we think about building muscle, we tend to think about getting our protein. And naturally, we want to make sure we're getting the best protein. So in this video, let's talk about that and see how important it is to pay close attention to the proteins we eat if we want the best gains. As you know, a lot of great fitness experts like to repeatedly bash the importance of protein into our brains, which makes me the unequivocal greatest fitness expert of all time. But it is abundantly clear why protein is such a critical component. Amino acids, the compounds found in protein, and the second most repeated term in high school biology behind mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell by the way, are not only the building blocks of our muscles, but also the building blocks of virtually our entire body. So regardless of whether or not you're as big on fitness as the guy counting his shoulder striations in the locker room, you still gotta get your protein. That said, there is no denying the positive relationship between protein intake and muscle growth. If you are trying to build muscle, you will benefit greatly with more protein, which again naturally leads us to ask which protein sources are actually the best. In this case, to quote all the stoic and boring philosophy professors around the world, for one to answer this question, one must first ask more questions. In this case, 2 questions. First, are there even any differences between different protein sources that can make a difference? And the answer is yes. Part of it has to do with those pesky amino acids. Some proteins have more essential amino acids, which is what we want from our proteins since our bodies cannot make these amino acids themselves because they are amino acids. Muscle in particular benefits greatly from a subset of essential amino acids known as branched chain amino acids or BCAAs. And because of their role in stimulating muscle protein synthesis, a process that drives muscle growth, BCAAs has become quite popular as a fitness supplement. However, science has shown that these wonderful supplements are quite trash. Not that BCAAs themselves are useless, but it's because of the fact that BCAAs are most effective only when consumed alongside all the other essential amino acids. Essentially, if you're supplementing BCAAs but ignoring all the other essential amino acids, then you're kind of missing the forest for the trees. And that means, ideally, we want to consume protein sources with a good amount of all essential amino acids, a good amount of BCAAs, and a good amount of protein-induced flatulence, and typically, we do find the best profile of amino acids in animal proteins. Dairy, in particular, is very popular because it can be processed into supplements with stellar amino acid profiles, one of which we know as the super popular whey protein. There's also whey's little supplement brother known as casein protein. Sadly, casein tends to forever sit on top of store shelves rather than expire on top of refrigerators like whey does, mostly because it has an unfortunately much more difficult name to make puns with. But overall, animal proteins usually have the best amino acid compositions. It's also superior in protein quality, which basically means it's more easily digested and absorbed for use. Animal proteins undoubtedly are great protein sources. But before you start laughing and eating bacon in front of your vegan friends, we still have that one other question to ask. Does this whole amino acid and protein quality situation actually make a big difference? This is where things get a bit interesting. Everything we just discussed before is technically true, and for a long time, protein quality and amino acid profiles have been the primary arguments in support of animal proteins for muscle growth. But what truly matters is the end result, the actual gains. And in this case, sorry my meaty friends, you're not all that special. Yes, amino acid profile and protein quality can make a difference, but usually that difference is rather small and for only specific cases, like cases involving older populations. However, like BCAAs, in most cases, your protein source becomes quite irrelevant as long as you properly manage 2 much more important factors. And those are your training and overall protein intake. If focusing on BCAAs instead of all essential amino acids is like missing the forest for the trees, then focusing on protein sources instead of effective resistance training and sufficient overall protein intake is like missing the entire planet for the trees. Thing is, your protein source has as much to do with your lack of gains as a lack of a spotter has to do with my shitty deadlift numbers. Instead, I'd wager it has all to do with your current training and or your total protein intake. And yes, some of our nerdy science bros have recently shown this to be the case. The nerds found that as long as you're getting about 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day and also training effectively, the source of your protein, be it mostly from plants, animals, or a combination, will lead to just about the same amount of gains. If you've been in the fitness scene for a while now, you'll know that this 1.6 figure is nothing new. But now you also know that it applies to not just animal proteins, but plant proteins as well. Ultimately, you are good to go as long as you reach this 1.6 figure. Of course, I can already hear some of you guys with your grubby little butter-stained fingers typing, "Surely, protein source still matters if you're not reaching 1.6 grams. First, don't call me Shirley, because if I were to have a more feminine name, it most certainly would be Sharon. And second, as far as the research goes, we can't say for sure protein source would actually still matter. Again, we have some research showing that it mainly applies to specific circumstances, usually dealing with elderly populations who do seem to favor milk proteins over plant proteins. But there are also several studies with lower protein intakes that show plant proteins, especially in supplement form, keeping up with its animal-based counterparts. Now, in fairness, trends do seem to favor milk proteins more so than plants, but usually the differences are not statistically significant and sometimes even lean in favor of plant proteins. But again, hitting this 1.6 figure essentially makes all of this a moot point. And if you are somewhat invested in your fitness, which I would assume you are since you're watching this video, then you're probably already consuming a fairly high protein diet. And keep in mind, this only applies to people that are trying to maximize muscle growth. If you don't care about maxing things out, then just get as much protein as you can from wherever you can. But if you do want to maximize growth but still fall short of 1.6 grams, then you're much better off trying to figure out how to reach 1.6 grams rather than change up your whole grocery list. It's like worrying about spotting your friend on the bench press to keep him safe when there's more pressing matters, like making sure your hair looks fabulous in the mirror before that one girl walks by. But to protect myself from all the clickbait critics or people that don't care what I have to say and just want answers, which is most of you, let's go ahead and make a short list of the supposed best protein sources anyway. Sitting at the very top of the list is indeed good old milk proteins. Unless you are lactose intolerant, dairy proteins are the way to go. Solid amino profile and quality, and also very available in most places. And of course, dairy includes the supplement champions of whey and casein. Whey does take a slight edge over casein because whey is simply way cooler, whey all the way. Following slightly behind dairy are more animal proteins, namely eggs and chicken. Again, solid quality and profiles all around. And to finish off this short best of list will be our lone plant-based entry of soy. Virtually all forms of soy, but definitely its supplement form, are amazing sources of plant-derived proteins. It has the best single-source profile, quality, and macronutrient composition compared to all other plant proteins. Now, it doesn't mean all other plant proteins suck, they just need a bit more mixing and matching to complement each other's amino acid profiles, like pairing pea protein with rice protein, whereas soy can stand all on its own. And there you have it, these are arguably the top sources of protein. But to once more reiterate, if you are already knocking down enough overall protein, then like all the calf raises you do, none of it really matters. Get your training, get your total protein, and you'll certainly get your gains. Other than that, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a way awesome thumbs up and share it with your protein-loving friends. Subscribe for more, and please be sure to let me know what you think in the comments. As always, thank you for watching, and don't forget, really, to get your protein.